All right. The Occidental Center for the Arts presents a tribute to Blues and Rock Hall of Famer Charles Brown on Saturday, September 20th at 7 p.m. All-star lineup, including the musical director, Danny Caron, who is here talking with me right now. Hello, Danny.
Hi, how you doing, Doug?
Good. Thanks for talking. And now you have a little history with Charles Brown, and talk about Charles and why everyone should know him.
Well, I've always liked that 40s blues and jazz period. Uh, I like jazz and blues going all the way back to its inception, but you know, because the electric guitar started happening in the late 30s, whatever, you know, I've always gravitated to the early electric guitar music,
Hmm.
and not that I don't like all the other music I do, but there's just something about that early sound, when the blues and jazz kind of intermingled, that that has always been especially um, interesting to me. And so I had heard Charles Brown, and I had already been out there touring and doing some touring in the blues and R&B world. I had lived in Austin for a year and played with Marcia Ball, and then I had gone to Louisiana and I played for a year with Clifton Chenier, and we did a lot of blues festivals and things like that. And then I'd been out in the Bay Area for a while and played blues festivals with Mark Naftalin and other people in the Bay Area, and I figured if Charles Brown was alive, that I would have heard of him, being alive. And I just thought he was dead. I mean, I had the records that I really liked, and the old re-releases of the exclusive and Aladdin sides, and had come out. I was at a friend of mine's house here in Berkeley, and he said, "No, Charles Brown's alive. I think he made a record last year." And this was around 1987, and he pulled out the 1986 recording that Charles Brown had made on Blue Side Records, which is now available on Alligator, called "One for the Road."
Hmm.
We listened to it, and he also had the re-release vinyls of the early stuff, and we listened to some of that. And we listened to the recent album, and it was great. It had Billy Butler on guitar, and Earl May and Harold Owsley on saxophone, and Earl May on bass, and and it was obviously a New York recording, and sounded great. And I thought, well, you know, why isn't this guy doing these tunes? Where is he? And and Michael said, well, he lives a couple of blocks from here. He was living in the Harriet Tubman apartments in a rent controlled, Section 8 housing here in Berkeley. And I said, wow, it'd be so great to play with him sometime. I don't know if he's still really doing it. And my friend Michael Hawkeye Herman, who was an acoustic blues player mostly, had hired Charles to play on his record and do a couple of tracks on his record. And then later in that year, Charles Brown called him and asked him if he would play guitar with him on a Christmas show at the Concepts Cultural Gallery in Oakland. And Michael didn't really feel comfortable doing it. He didn't play a ton of jazz or anything, but he said, "But I know a guy that would really like to do it." And he gave him my phone number, and he called me, and he gave me Charles's phone number. And I went over to his place with my guitar, and right from the minute that I met him, you know, I mean, he was a real character,
He seems like a real sweetheart. I've watched some interviews with him
Oh,
and seen him perform.
yeah,
What a cool
absolutely,
guy. Now,
absolutely.
did you tell him that you thought that he was dead?
I might have. I can't remember. I might have told him that.
He probably he probably hears that or heard that. He had a period of time though when he was wasn't he blackballed from music for a while, and he kind of went under for like sometime back in the 40s or 50s where he didn't play at all.
Yeah, he was always playing. He never stopped playing. Um,
I guess
but
performing is what I meant.
he never stopped performing. But but you know, when he joined Johnny Moore's Three Blazers in 1946, 45, um, it didn't take them long to become the one of the number one acts in the country.
hmm
They were touring the Apollo and the real black theater circuit, and their records were number one on the jukebox. Driftin' Blues was a huge hit, and then a couple of years later, Merry Christmas Baby was a huge hit.
And these
And
are songs that he wrote as
yeah, these are songs he
and
wrote. He
recorded.
never got any credit for Merry Christmas Baby, basically because Johnny Moore and Leon Rene, and they just kept his name off it. But he sang it. He wrote half the lyrics, and
hmm
he should have gotten credit for that, but he didn't. But he did write "Please Come Home for Christmas," which is another equally, if not more, played and recorded song. So
hmm
his estate makes plenty of money from that one, luckily. But he could have really cleaned up if he'd gotten at least a partial writing credit on "Merry Christmas Baby,"
Yeah.
which I believe he should have gotten. Um, but he wrote that. And he wrote "Driftin' Blues." He had other hits. He had about 9 or 10 big hits with and after the Blazers into the early 50s. And then "Please Come On for Christmas" was 1961, which he recorded on a record for King Records for Sid Nathan. But but uh,
So you played one gig with him, and
we
then
did,
did
yeah.
you end up joining his group or doing more stuff with him?
Well, yeah. I mean, we rehearsed, and he hired the band for the Concept Cultural Gallery,
hmm
and he had this. The connections Charles had were all like some of the greatest musicians in the Bay Area who had illustrious careers from Charles's generation, or closer to it, and they all had drinking and drug problems. So
hmm
they would be great for the first set, and then they would be a mess, for for the rest of the night. And they didn't have cars, and 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 it was kind of hit or miss with the band. And I was playing with some great musicians in the Bay Area already, and I told Charles, I said, if you really want to take this to the next level, which wouldn't be hard to do, you just need to have a more professional, stable band, you know. And he was like, well, okay. I mean, he was never, he never said no, because he was so happy that somebody was
Oh,
enthusiastic.
it was probably a relief to have you make that offer. And
He
what a
didn't want, yeah, Charles just
yeah,
wanted to play great music. He didn't want to do any business,
yeah.
and he never did. I mean, way before he met me, even back in the late 40s and early 50s, he always had someone else manage his business. And that didn't always work out so well for him, but
Yeah.
because he had managers that weren't in the band, he had these guys that were notorious, blood sucking guys that just took half his money. But, you know, um, I told him that. And then I had been working with Gaylord Birch, who was, one of the greatest drummers, period in America. And, uh, and so I thought Gaylord would be great. And I asked Gaylord, you know, to recommend a bass player that he'd like to play with because I really wanted the rhythm section to like each other and be happy. And he said, well, I think you should get Ruth Davies. And
Wow.
I knew Gaylord's playing. I didn't know Ruth that well. This was 1987, 88. And I got together with Ruth and Gaylord for a minute in Gaylord's garage. And as soon as we played, 4 bars, it was just obvious that was going to work out. And Charles knew Clifford Solomon, who had been Ray Charles' band leader and who had played with Lionel Hampton and Ike and Tina Turner and John Mayall, and had an illustrious career, lived in Los Angeles. And so Charles brought Clifford up, and we toured as that was our band, and we recorded with that band, and we toured with that band, and then Gaylord sadly died of cancer about halfway through the 10 years. So for about 5 of the years, it was Gaylord, and then Deszon Clairborne came in and did the rest of it until Charles got ill and could no longer tour. So it was about a decade where we ended up having a great run, and as the band got tighter, people started giving us enough money, and we had a decent booking agents, and we got out and about. Went around the country, went to Europe, had a trip to Japan, had a trip to Brazil, went to Canada. So we got around, and what else did we do? We were on the Tonight Show, and
Oh, cool.
we played Kent Clinton's inaugural. Charles was on Letterman. So we had it was great. We did Charles did a tour with Bonnie Raitt as a solo guy, and then she brought the whole band out another time for a summer tour, and we recorded with all kinds of amazing people, from Dr. John and
Well, you're really kind of responsible for putting that together, though. I mean, you really made
Charles and I did it together. We did it together.
But had it not been for you helping him out, he probably would not have been on all these TV shows. And I mean, you really got him. You really got him going.
Yeah, he might have been. There were other people that already had him on their radar, but he didn't have a band.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely guided his hand in terms of the set list and which tunes I thought would be good ones, and and we had a few teeth pulling sessions for me trying to get him to stop playing certain tunes he was playing at him, because he had been working in piano bars, and I mean, he was doing Just the Way You Are and Bridge Over Troubled Water and a couple of tunes, and he did them great, but they were a little bit outside of the repertoire. They were a little more towards what you'd find in a lounge band, and not as much what you'd find in a blues band or a real swing and jazz band. And not like they couldn't have been done, but
I know, but it's like you're working with Charles Brown, and he's like one of the greatest R&B artists of all time. And like, here's your lane, Charles, right?
Well,
I mean,
he had this great repertoire of tunes.
Oh yeah.
We had enough tunes without those, so and it took me, probably a year and a half to extract those. When I would tell him not to do them, or I didn't like him, or I didn't think he should do them, the next gig he would do them, and he'd say, "Now Danny doesn't like it when I do this."
Oh, great.
Yeah, right.
Thanks, Charles.
And I'm sitting there going, "Oh, great," But so for a couple of months, I had to endure that, and then he finally just stopped, But in terms of the arrangements and how the songs actually went, and really honing the chord changes, Charles was brilliant, and we did that together. Sometimes he would overwrite, and then I would try to help him simplify so we really went back and forth musically too, and we had a great relationship. I mean we always agreed pretty quickly and got tunes to where
Well, good for you, man. That's life-changing stuff. We're talking with Danny Caron, everybody. He is the musical director of the upcoming tribute to Charles Brown that's happening at the Occidental Center for the Arts on Saturday, September 20th. Now, Danny, you're the musical director and guitar player. Introduce the rest of the band for our listeners and tell them their name and what they play. And
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we couldn't do it without somebody singing, right? And uh, we're really fortunate to have Nicolas Bearde uh, reprising the Charles Brown vocals because he's great. You know, he's a great entertainer uh, in his own right. He's got a great career. If you haven't seen Nicolas in the Bay Area, you certainly should. And he's taken to this repertoire very well, and he's enjoyed it, and he does it very well. So it feels very natural with him singing it, you know, to do the songs.
Will he be singing just the way you are on Saturday?
He won't.
Okay. Just,
And
I figured that.
yeah,
Figured he would.
and and you know, not that there's anything wrong with it. And uh, we have John R Burr playing piano, and he's done these tunes over the years once or twice, but we don't do this tribute thing a lot. And uh, Charles's 100th birthday was a couple of years ago. And so we did a centennial tribute. And then we thought, well, this was really fun. You know, we did that with John Cleary down in Texas City
Oh man.
and did it with him and Gerald French. And, you know, between the two of them singing, it was great. Uh, and Ruth and I did it. And we realized, well, we could do this, if we get the right people, we could do it once in a while. It's not something we want to make a career out of, but Charles's tunes are too much fun not to play, and we really like playing them, and they're
And
cool.
it's great to remind people of Charles Brown because an artist like that, other than I mean, I play him on NPR, but there's only so many hours in a week, and you go a long time without playing any Charles Brown. So anytime that you can shine a spotlight on an artist like him and let everyone know how wonderful he was, it's a cool deal.
Well, those tunes, nobody else plays them. I mean, and they
Hmm.
certainly don't do them like we used to do them. So, so it's a
John
treat.
R. Burr is a great pianist, by the way. I've heard him play before. He's he's
He's
he's wonderful.
He's great, and we've also done this with Eamon Flynn, who's also great and sings as well. So he gets to sing a few of them when he's there. But John is great, and so we've got John R. Burr on piano doing the Charles piano. It takes two people to do Charles Brown. We've got John being the piano player. In case your audience didn't know, Charles Brown was a great piano player and a great vocalist and a great songwriter, and a great entertainer. So we've got Nicolas singing, Nicolas Bearde. We've got John R. Burr on piano, Ruth Davies on bass, myself on guitar, and Deszon Clairborne on drums, who were Charles's rhythm section. And then Kristen Strom is doing the saxophone, and she's really listened to Clifford, and we've been studying the live recordings. So we've got the flavor of the band down pretty well. It swings a lot like it used to. And that's the important thing to me, is that it just feels like you're on a gig, like on a Charles gig,
Yeah,
I mean, nothing can really replace Charles Brown. He was, they broke the mold when when they made him. But
yeah.
it's nice to be able to bring these tunes to life, and it's really a treat for the audience. We did it a couple of weeks ago and at Columbia in Santa Cruz, and we got a standing ovation at the end. The audience,
Oh, sweet.
yeah, it was it was very satisfying. We did it at the Freight and Salvage last December, and that also was a really great show, and the audience really loved it. So we've got a couple more. We've got this one and another one later.
Sweet. Well, it sounds great. I'm really looking forward to the show. Uh, Danny, Karen, talk a little bit about how your life changed meeting Charles Brown. How would your career have been different had you not run into him?
Well, it couldn't have come at a better time. Let's put it that way. I had been in the Bay Area for a while. I had that magic experience of playing with Clifton Chenier for a year in Lafayette, Louisiana, and that kind of set a certain bar for me of what I really wanted to do, you know. And I just there's a certain level of authenticity and soulfulness that I need in order, in enjoy playing music. And I've never really been happy playing music that where there isn't some magical front person who is, you know, obviously, you know, communicating musically at a really high level. And, you know, Clifton Chenier was certainly one of those guys. I later, when I was out in the Bay Area, I had a chance to back up a whole bunch of great blues people with Mark Naftalin because he would put together his Monday night band, you know, so we got to back up a bunch of people. And I played with Dan Hicks for a year, and he was a magical, you know, insane human being. And you know, so having those experiences, Marcia Ball was great. And so that, you know, when I met Charles, it was just another thing. And when we started going to Los Angeles and the people that Charles knew started coming out of the woodwork, and, you know, suddenly I was meeting Hannah Brooks and, you know, Nellie Letcher and Nancy Wilson and, you know, Lowell Folsom and Teddy Edwards and John Clayton and Gerald Wilson and, you know, having got
Which for music fans, I mean, these are names that, like, as we go through our record stores and looking at albums, these are names that we've been familiar with for years and years. So yeah, that's awesome.
these are monsters in the American music
Mhm.
world. And we went to New York and played the Blue Note, and everybody in New York, from Billy Eckstine to Al Hibbler to Dr. John to, you know, Omar Hakim. I mean, you know, just ridiculous, you know, but Paul Schaefer, all these people would come and hear us, you know, and we did a 2-week run at the Blue Note with Billy Preston. And that was like the first gig we did on the road, you know, and they gave us David Fathead Newman and Major Holly and uh, uh, um, Keith Copeland was the drummer. And that was our band. You know, it was just Charles and I, and we played with the house rhythm section, which happened to be guys that lived in the neighborhood.
Oh man,
You
good
know,
for
so
you.
I mean, it was that kind of thing, and we got nice write-ups in the New York Times, and we'd go to L.A. and play the Cinegrill, and you know, you know, Willie Dixon would come, you know, and you know, Bonnie Raitt, you know, I mean, I think Elvis Costello was recording a record, and he came with his whole recording band at the time, you know, Ben Montench and all these people, and they came and sat there and watched a couple of sets, and you know, weird people would come in like Richard Gere, who it turns out plays jazz guitar, you know,
Wow.
you know, and we did a run 1 week at the Cinegrill with James Gatson playing drums with us,
Mm.
who is the drummer from the Watts 103rd Street Rhythm Band and is just plays on Donald Fagen's Nightfly record. You know, it's like, you know, so I was in heaven. You know, did my life change? Yeah. We made a record with Van Morrison and John Lee Hooker that won 2 Grammys, you
Oh
know.
right. Don't Hold Back, is that the name of it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
I
great
mean,
record.
you know, and we played Clinton's inaugural with Los Lobos. You know, we went to Brazil with Los Lobos. I mean, those are experiences that any musician would want to have, and I don't take any of them for granted. You
Yeah.
know, and none of it would have happened if it hadn't been working with Charles Brown, who was just this magic, you know, human being.
Well, good for you, man. I'm so happy that you're doing this show, and I hope we get a good turnout there at Occidental. The
Me too.
show's on Saturday, September 20th. Coming right up, it's the tribute to blues and rock and roll Hall of Famer Charles Brown. Danny Caron, great talking to you.
Doug, thank
See
you
you
so
on, see
much.
you on Saturday.
See you Saturday.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
All right, bye bye.
Bye. All right, good job, Danny. Thank you.
Yeah, that was great. I hope I didn't talk too much, but that was, you
I,
know,
I might edit it when I play it on the radio, but I'll have the whole thing up on the website
yeah,
so
please,
people can hear it. And I'll make sure you get the link.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that, and definitely come say hi. I may be a little frazzled at the gig, but
I will for
of
sure.
course, yeah, come say hello.
All right. Thanks, Danny.
All right,
Bye.
see ya.